Welcome back to Listen to the Helpers, a podcast created by the Fred Rogers Institute to elevate the voices of helpers everywhere. Fred Rogers once said, "When I was a boy and would see scary things in the news, my mother would say to me, 'Look for the helpers. You will always find people who are helping.'" Today we are joined by Malkia Singleton Ofori-Agyekum, the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for ParentChild Plus. At the end of today's episode, stay tuned as Kenzee and I reflect on our discussion with Malkia in the context of Fred Rogers' legacy and our own work at the Fred Rogers Institute. Malkia, we're so thankful to have you with us today on this episode of the podcast, and we'd love to start out by asking you if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you are, and what you do.
Sure. So my name is Malkia Singleton Ofori-Agyekum. I am currently the Mid-Atlantic Regional Director for ParentChild Plus, which is an early literacy school readiness home visiting organization. And we're currently in 15 states and 4 other countries right now. And I'm sure I'll share more about ParentChild Plus a little bit later. I am a native of Maryland, Glen Burnie, Maryland to be exact, which is about 15 minutes away from Baltimore. I have spent my career mostly in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, um, initially working in emergency housing, working with women and children experiencing homelessness. And about 10 years ago, I moved into home visiting with ParentChild Plus. And actually, ParentChild Plus has brought me back to Maryland. So I now support our programs in Philadelphia, Easton, PA, as well as Baltimore, Maryland.
Wow, what a really amazing career and just so much helping, it sounds like. And I didn't know that you were from and are currently located in Maryland. I'm also from Maryland. I'm from Columbia.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm from Glen Burnie.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's
Oh my gosh. I
what a
love meeting fellow Marylanders. It
yes,
feels like a rare occurrence.
yes, for sure. And especially being in Latrobe now in this like small area of Western Pennsylvania.
Right.
Nobody's from Maryland. So
Yes, that's
so
awesome.
that's so fun.
Awesome.
Awesome. So, how did you find yourself with like Parent Child Plus? Like, what inspired you to join that organization, or how did you just come about it in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah. So like as I was sharing, I was working in emergency housing for probably about 15 years, 15, 20 years. I started in that work as an infant room teacher. And that's where I really got bit by the early childhood education bug. I realized like I really like what I'm doing because the emergency housing program that I was working at had a parenting program. It's called the Parent Child Education Program, where we had a program for the residents who had children 0 to 5. We provided childcare while the residents went to workshops, and the whole thing, the whole wraparound piece of supporting families with young children that were also experiencing homelessness. So I liked what I was doing, but I realized like I don't know what I'm doing. So I went and got my master's degree in early childhood education. And honestly, as my career went on in emergency housing, I got further and further away from early childhood education. And at one point, I was like, I don't like what I'm doing professionally anymore. I'm really not happy professionally. And I just had to sit back for a minute and think about why. And it was because I wasn't doing early childhood education anymore. So at that point, I decided, well, it's time to get back into ECE, the ECE world. And the Pennsylvania State Director position for Parent Child Plus became available. Like I literally was just doing a random job search on Idealist or Opportunity Knocks, and that opportunity was there. And the more and more I researched about Parent Child Plus, I was like, this is like the perfect marriage of everything, of some advocacy, but also program support for early childhood and supporting families. And that took place in 2016 because Greenlight Philadelphia brought Parent Child Plus to Philadelphia. So they needed somebody like a liaison from the National Center, which is in New York, to kind of help get that program up and running. So I've been doing that since 2016. And just really honestly really fell in love with the model. And I will say, and I've said it many places, I feel like the way Parent Child Plus engages with families, is the way to work with families. I've worked in a lot of different environments, and nothing ever felt quite right. But this feels right, and what feels right about it is that we partner with parents. We're very intentional about having a non-judgmental approach to working with families. Our home visitors come from the same communities that our families come from. We make sure there's a cultural and linguistic match between the family and the home visitor. So the program's done in over 40 languages nationally. It's like all those things they may sound small, but like they're really important, very so impactful. And we treat families like they're the experts in their own lives, because they are. It's not that we're just saying it, we live it. And so I really have a lot of respect for the model, so much respect for the wonderful staff I get to work with. I've never really worked with a group of dedicated people like I get to work with in both Pennsylvania and in Baltimore. So it's been a great experience. So grateful for it.
I just have to say, I love that you mentioned that you partner with just the way that you're talking about the framing of the work that you do is really, really interesting. And I can tell how intentional that the work that you do is, because you're talking about partnering with the parents, and that
Right.
families are the experts in their own lives.
Yeah.
Saying like, we're not coming in to tell you what to do and what the right or wrong way to do what you do.
Right.
They know what they're doing because
They know what they're doing. Right.
you're just
Exactly.
support them. I love that. And
Yeah.
like, you can just tell how intentional your work is by the way that you're talking about it.
Yeah. 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 And I appreciate, and I've had this experience over and over again, that like when we have a special event or a funder may come to a site visit, we don't have to do a whole bunch of preparing what we're going to do and say, because we talk about what we do. This is what we do, and there's nothing more to it, and I can really just appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I really love your emphasis of the term intentional. Everything that you do is intentional. But I'm curious, like for your role as a regional director, like what does your day-to-day look like?
Every day is different. Every day is different, which I like.
Mhm.
I really like that every day is different. So it can be a myriad of things. It could be conversations with funders. It could be honestly getting reports and data to funders. It could be doing some funder prospecting, because that is a part of my role, is making sure sites have what they need to be able to function. Of course, that involves money. So a lot of external relationships, and that's from a funder side, but also just a partnership aspect. So I do sit on a lot of different steering committees, like for like our campaign for grade level reading arm in Philadelphia, which is called Read by Fourth. I sit on a couple different committees with them, because that is, a part of what we're doing, is making sure early literacy in place. So, by third grade, children are reading on grade level. So they've been a great partner. Also, we're like on a steering committee for centralized intake for home visiting in Philadelphia. In Maryland, there's a group of early childhood programs called Judy Centers, that they're embedded in schools, but they're there to really address like the 0 to 4-year-old needs before a family has to even enroll in school. So really trying to build that relationship. So involved in that, and also because our organization works with such a large immigrant population, and we do in Philadelphia as well, in Baltimore and Easton, is that I'm involved in some different immigrant supporting groups as well in both states. So yeah, so meetings, doing a lot of talking and external relationships, a lot of doing an overview of what Parent Child Plus is, connecting with the sites, making sure they have what they need, and kind of synthesizing, taking that information back, and then having internal meetings at the National Center to hopefully resolve anything that needs to be resolved.
Wow, it sounds like you wear so many hats and you do so many things in your
Yeah.
role. And I love, Fred Rogers has a quote. He mentions the idea of being more than just one thing, and how people are more than what they seem on the surface. And I think just
Right.
hearing you talk about your role that makes me think of, Fred talking about that, because you are clearly more than just one thing. You are all of the things.
And our state directors. I'm not the only, regional director. We have 7 state directors. So we all, and and I'll say this, another thing I really appreciate about Parent Child Plus is that we know every city, every place, every town, every state looks different, right? So what's going to make sense in Pennsylvania or Philadelphia may not make sense in Baltimore, and certainly may not make sense in San Jose, California, or Seattle, Washington. So I think it's really important that we provide enough structure for our sites, but we also give enough flexibility that they can meet local needs and function the way they need to in their, where they live, because it's different. It just is.
Yes, and I'm so glad that that is the way that you and your organization view things, because that's so true. It's something that works for one population is simply not going to work in the same way for another.
Right.
So I'm really
Right.
glad to hear that.
Right. Even within the same city, right? One neighborhood is gonna work there, in another neighborhood you got to have a whole different approach. So, and that's why it's so important that our staff come from the communities that our families live in.
That's so wonderful. And it's so clear that you are working in a helping profession, and I'm wondering what do you think it means to be a helper?
Yeah. So I think being a helper is really providing the help that somebody wants or needs, not the help you think they want or need. They say, the golden rule is, do unto others as you would have done unto yourself, right? But the platinum rule is do unto others as they would have done unto them.
Mhm.
And that I'm not saying I live up to that every day, but it's something I do aspire to, and what that takes is it takes listening. The Philadelphia team and we had a really unique opportunity to do a Parent Innovation Institute to learn about family-centered design. It was a really great experience. And what made it so great was that it was a team of 3 staff. I was one of them, and then 2 parents. And we had like 6 months to be together to learn about this model and think about how it could be applied to Parent Child Plus. And one of my key takeaways from it was I always thought I was a good listener. I was like, I don't know how much I'm really listening. I'm listening to solve. That's not listening. Like, just listen to what somebody is saying. It takes practice. So to me, that's the ultimate helper. That's something I aspire to, you know.
Or it's hard to not just listen to solve, especially when you're in a job like yours, when you are, you're there to solve and help and try to
Yeah.
fix things or prevent
Yep.
things from
Yep.
problems. And so to try to like hone that skill of really listening, I'm sure that's really challenging.
Yeah. It can be. It's really interesting how hard it is to do nothing.
Yeah.
It's
Oh
very
yeah.
hard to do nothing.
Yes. And
Sometimes
that
that's what you have to do. And even without, home visitors, sometimes there is nothing to do. It is just to be there to listen.
No, definitely. No, I feel like I'm still trying to learn how to actively listen. It's easier said than done for sure.
Mhm.
So kind of related to, you talked about your day to day and how it looks a little different. Is there anything or something that you wish people knew about what you do or wish that more
Mhm.
people knew about your organization?
Yeah, well, you know what? I feel like Parent Child Plus is like a little known gem sometimes. A lot of people have never heard of Parent Child Plus, but we have been around for 60 years, as you can see in my background. We were founded in 1965, so we are celebrating 60 years this year. Um, so I wish more people knew about it, and I wish everybody could get Parent Child Plus, right? But of course, it costs money and all of that. But I think more than anything, I really just wish people a couple things. One, understand how important these early years are. One of some of the language we use is that children have 1,800 days from birth to kindergarten, and how important those 1,800 days are, right? So that more support can be put in place for families with young children, and really for everyone, not just quote unquote under-resourced areas. Everybody needs support. Everybody. Parenting is one of the most hardest jobs ever, right? So I wish this could be available for everyone, but also just the strength, the resourcefulness that is in communities. Even though you're going into help and support, but that people could really appreciate, how much. And sometimes that word resilience, it can be a tricky word, right? Because then why do people need to be resilient, right? And why do people always expect it to be resilient? But there's such resilience, such strength, such wisdom, you know, in the communities that we're working in. And I think most people look at them again as under-resourced, marginalized, all these different, words with a somewhat negative connotation. And it's a lot more there to it.
Mm-hmm. And I know you mentioned earlier that you pull from people, you pull from the community to kind of feed back into the community, so that you're kind of pulling from that wisdom and that, all of the skills that are already there. I
That
think
are already there. Yeah. And another thing that Parent Child Plus does that I really love is that we will hire our parents. So if a parent goes through the program and they would like to, like I love to do this with my community, and the organization we're partnering with has a capacity to hire, they will hire that parent. So nationally, 30% of our early learning specialists are former parents. We even have former parents as directors and site coordinators, so to me, there's no better advertisement of a program.
Yeah, and what better way to lift up the parents that you're working with by telling them and showing them that they are capable of
Yep.
amazing
Yep.
because
Yep.
it's
Yeah, and we haven't hired our first parent yet in Baltimore, but I suspect we will soon. And in Philadelphia, we've hired 4 parents so far.
That's really
And
incredible.
I'm pretty sure in Easton we've hired at least 1 parent as well. So it's like it really happens. Like and it's amazing when it does.
So amazing. Wow. So I imagine that with the nature of the work that you do, I'm sure that there are some tough moments or tough days here and there.
Mm-hmm.
Do you share a story of maybe a time that you remembered your why for doing what you're doing, maybe in the midst of a tough moment or tough day? Like, oh yeah, that's why I do what I do.
Yeah. Yeah, so and it's actually from our one of our sites in Baltimore. They're new. They're not even a year old yet. Um and starting up in a community with such a like grassroots approach and whatnot, it can take a while to build up your caseload and all those things. So one of our new sites in Baltimore, they shared a story with me, and after being, concerned about different things, and this is actually in an immigrant community, so the challenges that are happening. There's ICE in the community, people are afraid to open the door, it's a lot of fear. Just it's so much happening right now, especially in our immigrant communities. But this story is just super sweet. So and it's a Spanish speaking early learning specialist in a Spanish speaking family. And we go in twice a week. So it's really good for continuity. So the second visit of the week, I think the mom told the early learning specialist, "Oh, the little boy was asking about your hair. Like, why is it curly? Because his hair is straight. He had never seen somebody with curly hair." And so they had a whole conversation about the curly hair. And she said, "Oh, do you want to touch it?" And so he got to touch her hair, right? And that may sound like okay, so what to somebody else, but like that is a powerful moment in my mind, because honestly, if that was not happening where there was a similar cultural match, that could have a totally different meaning, right? So this child now sees somebody, looks like me, sounds like me, has curly hair, and wow, this is just something great about them, right? And, and then to follow that up, the activity was, to draw a picture of like your favorite person or something. Just draw a picture that you want to frame. And they had like little frames, and the little boy drew a picture of his home visitor.
Oh, wow.
So,
So special.
with the curly hair.
Oh.
And it, and I say this quite often to my sites, like, and this is why we do what we do. You know what I mean? And even if we don't, because we do have a pretty high touch program. It happens over 92 home visits. That's like can take a year and a half, you know. And sometimes families don't finish. Different things happen, right? And we have seen this a lot right now in immigrant communities. Folks are moving to different states or different things like that. And I said, but you know what? That as much time as they had with you, you made an impact. And this is why we do what we do. So that's one of a recent why, little boy discovering curly hair and how, that was just an amazing discovery for him.
Oh, that's such a sweet story. I love that. And it's true to on the surface it might seem like a like you said like a so what. He just asked a question about somebody's hair, but also thinking about how he felt comfortable to ask that question and how the home visitor responded to that question, that he's going to remember that interaction, whether it's subconscious or conscious.
Yeah,
When he goes on later in life and meets other people who are different or the same as him in different ways, he's gonna reflect on that moment.
right, right. And it's gonna be positive
Yes.
versus it could, you know what I mean? It could have
Yeah,
gone a different way if it was a
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
that would set a precedent for him. But he's gonna, that he can ask questions about a difference, and it's okay, and that's it's a great thing. So
Oh, that's so special.
yeah,
No, I definitely agree. I hope he grows up and be a curious guy.
yeah, for sure.
No, unfortunately, this is the end of our time,
Yes.
Malkia. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I just have one final question.
Mhm.
Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
I think one final thought would be you will never regret helping.
Mm.
Mm.
You'll never regret doing more, honestly. So just
What a
ponder
power
on that. Yeah.
for sharing that. That's really powerful to think about. I know I'll think about that as we end our time together for sure. Thank you so much again, Malkia. This is so
Oh,
wonderful.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
I so enjoyed getting to talk with Malkia and getting to learn a little bit more about her and the work that she does. What did you think of that conversation, Kenzie?
Oh my gosh, it was absolutely so amazing. I feel like Malkia had a ton of wonderful things to say and to learn more about Parent Child Plus as an organization and all of the wonderful work that they do, and especially what Malkia does as well, was just so insightful. What about you, Sarah?
Yeah, I was so thankful to be able to learn more about Parent Child Plus in general, and it sounds like Malkia is doing such important work, as is all of Parent Child Plus, but Malkia is being so intentional and so doing so many things. And I know I mentioned in our conversation with her the quote from Fred where he mentions being more than just one thing. Just for our listeners, I wanted to share the full quote. Fred said, "What's been important in my understanding of myself and others is the fact that each one of us is so much more than any one thing. A sick child is much more than his or her sickness. A person with a disability is much, much more than a handicap. A pediatrician is more than a medical doctor. You're more than your job description or your age or your income or your output." And Malkia is so many things, and that's only within her job description of what she does at Parent Child Plus. She's so many things outside of her job as well, but she's doing such incredible work.
Yeah, she is doing such amazing work. Something that stuck with me about her organization in general is the fact that about 30% of their staff are former like individuals that their families and children had gone through the same system, and they're coming back to help other families going through a similar thing. And they're all people within the same community as well. So like they're helping their actual neighbor, which is crazy to me.
And how pertinent to the work of Fred Rogers to be neighborly and help your neighbor. Like, you can't get more on brand with Fred than that. And that is so cool that organization really values the parents and families that they work with so much that they are uplifting them in that capacity when it is the right fit.
Right. And the fact that Malkia noted that, a couple of like characteristics of families and the workers of Parent Child Plus are also the fact that they're like very strong and resourceful and resilient. Like I just love the word resilient in general, but that's just such an amazing way to describe someone.
Yes, I agree. And thinking about that conversation with Malkia, which of the six fundamentals of learning and growing would you say stuck out to you in talking with her?
I'd say curiosity, just because of the last story that she shared about the young boy who made that connection with the home visitor, and got to like touch her hair and kind of talk through it because he had straight hair and had never really seen anyone with curly hair. That I think is just so uplifting, and just the connection there is beautiful.
That was such a special story and such a great story of a time for somebody to remember their why. I think, I said this to Malkia, but I think that says something really powerful about the relationships that are built between those home visitors and the families and the children in those homes, that the boy felt comfortable enough to ask that question and that the home visitor felt comfortable enough to make it a learning and fun experience. Because children and adults are curious when they notice things that are the same and different from others, and it can feel awkward to wonder things and not know if you're allowed to ask or not know how to ask or if you're asking in the right way, how to be, respectful of somebody else's differences. But for that boy to feel comfortable to just say like, hey, I've never seen something like that. I noticed that you have curly hair. And to make that into an experience that he will hopefully remember and will foster his curiosity for years to come. And it also made me think of Fred Rogers. He often talked about being the same and different. And Fred Rogers said, we're all so much alike, and yet we're all so different. I find myself rejoicing at the endless variety of human beings, and that's partly, I know, because your differences from one another tell me that it's all right for me to be different in many ways, too. So I'm thinking about that little boy and how hopefully he starts to not only foster that sense of curiosity, but hopefully a sense of self-worth in himself too, and to value others' sense of self-worth by recognizing those similarities and differences.
Yeah, I definitely think that self-worth really stuck out there, especially with the story with the young boy. And I think, for our listeners, in terms of like a charge or a takeaway that they should take from this conversation, Malkia, her final thoughts were to never regret helping. And I think that should be, that takeaway for our listeners.
Yeah, I agree. That is a good takeaway for our listeners. I think there were no better final thoughts to end with than the ones that Malkia shared with us. I really do think that it's true that you'll never regret helping another person. Um, so I guess the charge is to help someone, whether that's in a big way or a small way or something in between, whether it's a neighbor, a friend, or a stranger. Maybe find a small way to help that maybe you wouldn't have thought to do before.
Yep, that's a great idea, Sarah. Thank you for joining us for another great episode of Listen to the Helpers. The Fred Rogers Institute advances the legacy of Fred Rogers by investing in the strengths of families and caring adults to support the healthy development of children. To learn more about the Fred Rogers Institute and our initiatives, visit fredrogersinstitute.org and follow the Fred Rogers Institute on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.